And we should say that, of course, Helena Hutchins, very tragic loss. It's kind of weird the way people seem to get offended or object to all the talk about Alec Baldwin. But obviously, there's no question about what to do concerning Helena Hutchins, and she's unfortunately deceased. And the only question is what to do about the people who are alive. So that's why, and a lot of people are resentful toward Alec Baldwin because he's been nasty over the years. So that's only natural that people are wanting to say, hey, it's karma. But even apart from that, it's totally legitimate when somebody shoots another person with a gun and kills them to conduct a criminal investigation and to ask a lot of questions. So I don't apologize at all. I just want to get to what is customary. What do you? I'd imagine like insurance, for example, is a big deal on films, and they must have rules in place. No?
Yes, they do, and insurance just I never didn't even think about that, and that's exactly right. There are things that they have to meet certain standards, and what's customary, the things that I have worked on, everything from, like I said, low student up to bigger production films. You have a one person that is in charge of the firearms, and that person is an armorer that basically, the reason I go back to talk about that student film, that was done to the T's. I know it was, because the guy in charge of it made us walk through and load the gun, see the cartridges that we're be putting in there, but these are all things that they were done, and they hold the gun until it's time to either rehearse or shoot. And then they take it away. As soon as they say cut, boom, they take it out of the hands of the actor. But the armorer that I worked with on that particular film, he made it a point and said, look, you are the one holding the gun. You're the one pointing the gun, and you're the one pulling the trigger. You have to know what's going on, what is being loaded into that gun. This was a student film. What I'm talking about, the reason I bring that up is because on professional films, that happens. I've had that happen before. I worked in a Western where I got shot by a 30-30 from, horseback.
So what's the chain of custody? Walk me through the chain of custody on a professional film.
The chain of custody on that would be the armor has the gun. Right. He's actually...
or she, because it was a she in this case.
Absolutely right. He or she. They have the ammunition. They load it in front of you. At least they should in my examples that I've been around when I've had it.
What do you mean they load it? With what?
With the ones that we used were blank rounds. That gets into the whole different kinds of
right.
We talked about that are out there.
Mm-hmm.
What I was using is what's called a blank fire live gun. Mm-hmm. And basically that's just a regular gun that has been either modified or has cartridges made for the size that are blank cartridges, firing gunpowder to get the explosion out the end of the...
Okay, so the armorer walks over to the actor and loads it in front of the actor. But that doesn't prove that there's not something else already loaded, does it? Does the actor then not take a look and see if there's anything?
That's the first thing they do, would be show you that they cock it, show you that the cylinder is either empty, there's no other bullets in there. Right. In the magazine, they have an empty magazine, they're loading the magazine, they put the rounds into the magazine, and then load it and then engage it.
Right. So in this case, according to the press reports, what happened was the armorer, by the way, this is her second movie. She had just worked on her first. Her name is Hannah Gutierrez Reed. Her father was a professional armorer, and she was trained from an early age, and she's only 24 years old. And according to the press report, she laid, I think, 3 guns down, and the assistant director, whose name is Dave Halls, then brought it over to Alec Baldwin, and he said, cold gun, which apparently means there's not a live round in there. And the fact he's yelling out cold gun implies he checked it, or somebody checked it. He must have some basis for shouting that out. That's the whole reason for doing it. So it's quite odd. So is that part alone odd, that there was somebody between the armorer and the actor that brought the gun over, or not?
Jeff, I'm not on every set, how all the steps and everything that go on. I won't claim to know the expert. I may be an expert on that. From what I've experienced, either the second AD, the gun has been handed to somebody that's standing there with them, and that yelling of cold gun or live whatever it might be, however that is what I've experienced as well. Everybody knows you have to be aware that there is a gun on, because you always treat it as it's not.
So this is a very curious situation. There doesn't seem to be any likely explanation. It's very unusual, is it not? That there was a live round on the set at all. That they said they acted as if it was checked. And then also, isn't it odd to point the gun at any other human? Are they not supposed to point the gun away from people?
That's a whole other thing, Jeff. And I'll talk about just from an actor standpoint and training, and again, and any kind of weapons training that I've had, and I've taken weapons training for theatrical purposes. To begin with, I would assume that Alec Baldwin had done that over the years somewhere as well. I can't say that he did. However, one of the things that we do is we use angles. And the gun is never pointed directly at the person. It's usually towards the camera just a tad bit, so that you're not firing. If you do fire around, the muzzle blast or anything doesn't really hit you on that.
Right. So you were already familiar with guns before you acted in a film with guns, correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So in your case, you had training, but did you have to prove that? And in general, is there some sort of training for actors, or is that kind of optional, or you don't know?
Unfortunately, I don't think there is. I mean, I never took it. I've taken weapons training, but that was multiple weapons. But those are specific classes that are offered.
Right. Of course, Alec Baldwin has had training on the job, because he's a man in his 60s now who's been in a bunch of films.
I would think so, right?
And he's the producer of this film, which implies he has additional responsibility, although, as you know, there are different types of producers. So maybe if he's just an investor and has a producer credit for that reason, he would not be responsible in an additional way. But if he's the type of producer who is overseeing the film in some way, then he might have extra responsibility, wouldn't you think?
I would think so. I mean, I think it's going to go all the way up to the top. Whoever's got the financial investors, as well as the actual production producers and things like that.
Right. And a lot of his defenders online are saying, well, it's not his fault. The prop master and the armorer are supposed to check it, and so forth and so on. But here we have a film set where the crew had been complaining about safety hazards over the last few days. And so even if it's not Alec Baldwin's role to personally, interview the armorer and make sure they're qualified, you would think that when the crew is raising hell, that's a wake-up call to take corrective action, no?
Absolutely. That does not look good, specifically the things that happened leading right up to that. And, and you would think on something like that, if that is already out there in the wind, there would be extra precautions on, being very, very careful with what you're doing. But, if you've been on a movie set before, I've been on big budget, low budget.
Right.
It's organized chaos, man. It really is in a lot of ways. And so it really, things can slip through the cracks. Why there would be a live round, I mean, to me, on a set, in the vicinity, or just even with the guns, those guns should be kept separately from anything. If anybody's carrying a gun or anything, these are, as people are saying, prop guns. These are what they're using for the props in the movie.
Well, I don't think we know the exact model, but it was some kind of revolver, and the movie was set in the 1800s.
Right,
so would a gun like this be used at all, maybe apart from the film? So could that be the explanation, where there was a live round for use apart from the film? Or is this the type of gun that people don't even use nowadays in terms of firing?
I don't know what they were using. I will tell you personally, I have some antique revolvers that are muzzle loaders, black powder revolvers, things that might have been used during that period. I don't know enough about the period of what they're using, but they could be used for personal, personal reasons, personal pleasure.
That's the only thing that, and I don't even know anything about guns. I'm just, total layman, total idiot, frankly, when it comes to guns, but I'm just trying to use common sense, thinking about possible explanations. That's the only one that occurred to me, is the armorer uses that gun for something else, and that's why the live round was there, and it was her negligence, and then continued negligence. Does that make sense? Is that,
Yes, it does make sense. And as you know, any accidents can happen. Misplacing, being distracted, whatever, when they were packing up the gear to bring to the set or something like that. Because they're using maybe the blank rounds would be in a little cartridge case that they're just pulling out one after another, that there may be 50 cartridges of blanks in there. Well,
right. So in just briefly, what would you say is the job description of an armorer?
Well, an armorer is going to be, it can be a company, or it can be an individual too. Sometimes there are companies that are hired out to do that.
Well, in this case, it was an individual. So what's her job? This 24-year-old woman. What's her job?
They coordinate in all the live rounds, the firearms. They're the ones that coordinate that, and basically working with the actors to make sure safety is protocol 1, and that's basically.
Yeah. Well, what I'm getting at is it doesn't seem like they have that much to do other than make sure the gun is safely used, as opposed to, like, producers and other people on the film who have multiple responsibilities and are very busy doing a lot of different things. I may be wrong, but my guess would be the armorer probably just sits around most of the time and doesn't even do that much. So the one thing she had to do, she failed to do. Am I right?
Definitely right, and that is the one thing. It's like the kicker coming on. You got to kick that ball through the field goal. I mean, that's one thing you do. That's what they do here.
Yeah, not just the most important, but pretty much the only thing, right?
Right, absolutely.
Unbelievable.
And it's safety's number one. And so, yes, there's going to be a finger pointing at that person as well, but then chain of command, as you say, they hand that off to a second AD. The AD hands it off to the actor. I mean, I go back to me being an actor. I want to be right there with the armor when those rounds are loaded in. I want to inspect them. I want to make sure that I know what is in my hand, but that's just how I was raised, and that's also just how I was taught by the armor that I first worked with in the movies.
So do you think people are being unfair to Alec Baldwin? I don't know how much you've seen online, but obviously there's a lot of discussion about this. Is your general sense that people are being unfair to him because of, the feeling among many that he's been very nasty over the years? I mean, for example, for people who don't know, I mean, maybe I should spell it out. He's tweeted numerous times mocking Dick Cheney about his firearms accident.
Right. Yeah.
He's also known to have had numerous nasty exchanges with the paparazzi, not that they deserve much sympathy. He's also had a famous encounter with his daughter when she was about 12 years old. He left a voicemail message calling her a disgusting pig. So he hasn't exactly built up a lot of goodwill over the years.
No.
So that's part of it, but it doesn't mean that he doesn't deserve, what he's getting. So what do you think?
No, it doesn't, and I'd hate for everybody to go back and look at my past and pull everything up. However, I'm not.
Have you ever called a 12-year-old girl, whether it's your daughter or not, a disgusting
thing?
Yeah.
I haven't gone that far. But I will say this, though. When I first started reading all the stuff that's coming out there, and it's harsh, and but it's also just, let's flip the coin here. Had it been an evangelist preacher that's been preaching against homosexuality or whatever, and got caught it's happened, got caught in bathrooms or something like that.
Yeah.
And you put yourself up on that pedestal, whatever that pedestal might be, and something happens, you got to be ready for the pushback. And that's exactly what's happened here. He's run his mouth, and he said things about things.
Yeah.
That it's unfortunate this happened, but hey.
Right. I spent a little time on YouTube last night watching his various altercations with the paparazzi.
I know, right?
And I found myself actually siding with Alec Baldwin in most of the occasions, because these are like the scum of the earth, these people.
I'm with you on that,
right.
Yeah.
But I did find a couple where it seemed like he was over the top. In fact, you want to take a look at one of them with me?
Sure, let's look at them.
Okay.
Mr. Baldwin, any comments today, sir? You grab my face. I'm under the face. Come on. Huh? Don't look at him. What's your problem? You're assaulting. I'm assaulting you? Yeah, you're assaulting me. You're assaulting me. You're assaulting me. You're assaulting me.
That's simultaneously obnoxious and funny.
Right? No, I mean, I don't have much sympathy for the paparazzi either. So I mean, it's
Have you ever seen that particular footage before?
No, I never got to that level where I had to worry about that. I had one person one time think I was the Keith Stone guy. And actually, I was up for that part, but I didn't get it, and I kind of laugh at it. So.
He's an intimidating guy. I mean, you know, he pushes the guy against the car, he slaps the camera out, then he has the guy up against the wall. He's a macho dude, alpha male, right?
He is definitely large. He's not a small guy. I was looking at a picture of him yesterday when all this was going on, and I thought the same thing. I mean, not to say I've run into altercations over the years in my life, and I was going, he's a big dude. He's not not a small, he can intimidate you for sure.
Right. So he was on Howard Stern one time talking about taking an acting management class, like that was the penalty for one of these incidents. I don't know if it was this one or not. And let's take a look at that. That was pretty funny too.
Okay, yeah.
Does the judge force you to go like anger management and all this kind of stuff?
Yeah.
Does any of that work? I mean, it seems to me, it does?
Well, but what's funny is you go to
anger management?
You go to anger management classes.
That would make me angry.
When I was right, well, it's funny, but you're on something there.
Right.
But when you go to anger management, you realize you're not that angry.
Right.
You're there with other people in the class. You're there with other people in the class.
What have they done?
And exactly, they're like, I asked the guy. I don't want chopsticks. I want a fork. And he put the chopsticks in the bag. So I get to my office. I open it up, and there's chopsticks in there. So I go back. I'm like, what the fuck did I say to you? Everybody's going nuts.
And you're like, hey, dude, calm down.
And I'm sitting there going, hey, man, chopsticks can be a lot of fun. For countless generations of Asians have used chopsticks.
I'm a fucking American. We invented a fork.
Hey, Alec Baldwin, why don't you shut up?
See, he's pretty funny, actually.
He is actually. You're right, and he has some good moments that I sit there and listen to, and I think he'd probably be a cool guy to hang out with at times, but then other times he probably wouldn't.
Yeah, like the times he's not punching you. But that's probably the truth. That there probably were people who are like much worse than him in that class, and that is pretty funny. That example he's giving of somebody flipping out, getting chopsticks instead of a fork. I mean, I can definitely imagine that's
Makes
exactly.
You feel better about your own level of anger, right? It's like, people are messed up.
That's right. So before we say goodbye, why don't we take a look at a piece of your music, which I think is just great. Just a little bit of St. Mississippi. And when we return, think about how we can direct people to your Facebook page or whatever would be the right place to take a look at that.
One day I woke up and found St. Mississippi was nowhere around. Well, I heard she left us for warmer digs up on higher ground. Well, St. Mississippi, you old wine drinking hippie, thank you for the love you shared in that winter so trippy. I just want you to know you left a little tattoo on my soul. Well, every time I think about you, St. Mississippi, well, it makes me walk away slow.
What a great line. You left a little tattoo on my soul.
When it comes to songwriting, there's sometimes those little lines that come in that hit people. And that one, every time I've played it, that's the line that people come up with. And it just and that goes back to being raised in the church and feeling like I always said, I felt like I had, Jesus tattooed my soul, because every time, look around, and that's what made me think about with her. I said, she made such an impression that every time I think about her, I just have to pause.
Yeah, well, I'm not surprised to hear about that church background, because you have a very soulful style without going over the top like, they do on these Star Search type shows where it's ridiculous.
I couldn't get to the top for like that.
No, and it's not, they overdo it too, and it's more about nuance and, less is more. So, there were other portions of the song where you're even, you're subdued, and That's sort of the emotional peak of the song. So if folks want to check out more of your music, how can they find you online?
So on Facebook, I have a professional page. It's called C. Weir Entertain. It's also Christopher Weir. You can find me on social media, on Instagram, under C. Weir Entertain as well. But,
okay, and that's spelled how?
CWEIRENTERTAIN.
Well, thanks for spending some time in Orwell's and enlightening us about the world of firearms.
Well, thank you for inviting me, Jeff. I like Orwell's. I need to come back here again, man. I like to see some Black Label up there on the counter. I need to try.
All right, I'll talk to the proprietor. Wait a minute, that's me. I'll make sure you have what you want next time.
Good deal, man.
All right, Chris.
Thank you again. Appreciate it, Jeff.
My pleasure. Thank you.